The opinions expressed on this program represent the viewpoints of individual authors or contributors and do not necessarily reflect those of Troy University.
Hi, welcome to International Insights. I'm Doug Davis, and with me is Michael Slobodchikoff. On this episode, we'll be speaking with the Most Honorable Eduard Heger. Mr. Heger is the former Prime Minister of Slovakia and served in this capacity from April 2021 to May 2023. Prior to this, Mr. Heger served as the Minister of Finance. He led during the critical period when the Ukraine war started and brought military conflict to Slovakia's border. Mr. Heger, welcome to the show from Bratislava.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Heger, it is a true pleasure to welcome you on the show. I would like to begin with a general question and ask you about how is Slovakia unique in Europe, and what does Slovakia offer Europe and the world so that the audience knows?
Well, Slovakia is part of the former Czechoslovakia, as you might know, in the US, and since 1993 we became Slovak Republic. We are neighboring with Ukraine on the eastern border, and we are part of European Union since 2004, and also NATO. We are a nation of 5.5 million people, and one important information: we are the biggest producer of cars per capita. So we have a strong automotive industry as our backbone of our economy. So, and we produce in Slovakia are being produced many cars, brands like Volkswagen, Porsche, Audi, and Kia, Citroen, and also now to the eastern part of Slovakia, there is coming Volvo, which we are very thankful and grateful for. And it's going to be electric cars. So we have also electric cars being produced in Slovakia. So this is just a brief introduction of Slovakia as a strong with automotive industry. But we have also backgrounds in other sectors, but this I would say that we are most famous for.
Excellent. Again, thank you. It's a great pleasure to have you on our show. And I want to ask you about the European Union in general. And there are a lot of issues confronting Europe. Its economy, demographics, the war, and the general ethos of really kind of a loss of hope in its future. What are the biggest issues confronting Europe, in your opinion?
Well, of course, right now, the Russian aggression in Ukraine is affecting Europe. And we saw that Putin's steps where he lowered the flow of the gas into the storages within Europe in summer 2021 basically caused the whole inflation crisis, because it raised the prices of gas dramatically high. And in Europe, you have the price of the gas and electricity bound together. So when the price of gas goes up, then the price of electricity goes up as well. So this was by him very well prepared step, and he planned this operation. It was kind of what we call hybrid warfare. But now, since we diversified whole Europe from Russian gas and oil, we are no more dependent. We have enough gas in the storages. So the prices of gas and electricity went down almost to the level of before crisis. So the situation is kind of stable. But of course, there is several challenges. It's the security, but it's also the, I would say, economic autonomy, strategic autonomy, as I would say. This is something that we have to plan. And also the growth, economic growth. We are great in innovations, in green technologies, but we always have to keep up with the rest of the world. So there's a lot of challenges, but security is, of course, now the number one.
Perfect. I want to turn, you mentioned the Ukraine war for a second. you were prime minister when Russia invaded Ukraine. What did how Slovakia shares a border, as you mentioned earlier, with Ukraine, and Slovakia accepted many Ukrainian refugees. How has the Ukraine war impacted Slovakia?
Well, of course, I mean, we were preparing for this scenario, even though nobody really wanted this to happen, and we somehow believed and trusted that Vladimir Putin will not do it. But he did invade very dramatically, and it was a full-scale invasion on Ukraine, which nobody expected to be such a full-scale invasion. But of course, the first wave was the refugees wave, where a lot of mothers with children were fleeing from the battlefield and coming not only to Poland, but also to Slovakia. And we had actually 1 million people that went through Slovakia, and around 100,000 stayed in Slovakia for a certain period and then left back to Ukraine. So that was the first impact that Slovakia felt, was that we had to provide support to the mothers with the children. And here I'm very thankful to the Slovak citizens who opened their household, their hearts, and really helped and provided accommodation to these mothers and also to their children. Some of the women stayed on our labor market, and since we have a good relationship, and we had on the level of citizens, very good relationship with the people of Ukraine, so we are glad that they are still part of our economy at this moment. Well, second, as we were affected, as I said, was the prices of the gas and electricity. This was the whole challenge for the whole Europe, and also, as you might confirm, also to the United States and the whole developed world. So this is what we had to immediately have to deal with, prepare the Slovak economies, because they were very vulnerable. In Slovakia, before the war, the ratio of the energy bill was the highest out of all the countries from the expenses of the households. So we had to subsidize, and we did subsidize, so the Slovak households wouldn't feel the shocks in the electricity or gas bills. So this was well managed. And so these, I would say, were the two main areas that we were impacted immediately. Of course, the security issue, but since we are part of NATO, all the countries in Europe immediately started to increase the expenses on the defense budget. Slovakia, my government, we promised to do it even before the war, so we're climbing up to the 2% of GDP. And I think this is now absolute priority for all the countries within EU.
Excellent. Mr. Heger, you had a famous trip where you went to Kiev in the midst of the conflict as prime minister. What did you learn from your visit, and what did you see when you were in Kiev?
Oh yeah, it wasn't just Kiev. It was actually also, we went to Bucha, and it was right after the massacre in Bucha. And this is something that it's very hard to express with words, and you have to experience it. And it was very strong, very sad experience to see the massacre and see the streets and see the houses, how they were shot with all kind of weapons, machine guns, starting all to the tanks, etc. And we saw the mass grave in Bucha. So it was very sad experience, but you could see that how the war in a democratic world can be frustrating and terrifying in a country that was developing itself. And you would not think that in the 21st century that you have to experience. I mean, we never thought that we will experience it in such a close distance in our neighborhood. So it was very strong and a very sad experience that I brought back, and I was trying to explain also to our citizens how important it is to support Ukraine, because they're not only fighting for themselves, but they're fighting for the values. And that's what we have to understand, that any help we provide to Ukraine is an investment. It is not a charity. because we have to see that Vladimir Putin, he's a dictator. He's building his dictator empire, and it's a fight for the values, and they are trying to show that, and we have to show as a free world that it is not okay when a dictator attacks any free democratic country and thinks that nothing will happen to him. So this is a very strong also investment into our future, for our generations, for generations of our children and grandchildren, whether we dealt with it according to a certain loyalty to our values, or we just become tired of it. And we should not. There is no room for fatigue. It's, as I said, it's very important to look at it from the perspective of an investment. It's an investment for keeping the values for our children, grandchildren, but also it's an investment into our security and into our prosperity. Because if Ukraine will become and will get the chance to rebuild itself, it's going to boost the economy, not just in Central or Eastern Europe, but it's going to boost the economy of the whole world. I mean, Ukraine is known as a very rich with resources countries. It's known with great fields for grain, etc. So it's very important that this country will remain free, democratic, and will become a developed country. It will be definitely a benefit to the whole world, and it will increase our prosperity, as I said, not just in a close vicinity, but to the whole developed world.
Fantastic. Mr. Heger, I'd like to now turn to talking not just about the war, but in addition to the war, what are the greatest threats facing the EU, and what are the greatest problems that the EU faces?
Well, I can tell you my view. As I said, the priority number one is the security. We will have to increase the bill of the defense bill of GDP, and which is happening. I think all the countries are working on it very hard, and many will meet it. I think around 16, 17 countries will meet it fairly soon, and the rest will follow. So that's the first thing. But also, I think in general, we see that the countries face the issue of migration, illegal migration. So in Europe, we are dealing with how to protect the outside border, because we are Schengen. We have a Schengen union, basically border union, with many of the countries within EU. So we first have to protect the border, outside border, but on the other hand, we as a developed world have to think of a solution how to help the countries where the refugees flee from. So they will not have to leave their homes, and they can live in their homes. So I think that's very important. The issue of migration, that's another issue that as a Europe we deal. And then the economic growth, dependent, of course, we have to have in mind the climate change. That's very significant. But this is, again, a global problem. It's not just a problem of European Union. I think it's a global problem. So we have to act on these major global issues, as I would say.
Perfect. And just following up very briefly, is there a split between the East and the West at all in Europe, or is Europe more unified today than it has been in the past?
Well, I would say it's definitely more unified than it's been in the past. Especially, I mean, you could see the COVID, of course, was one season where the leaders had to unite to provide sufficient help to the citizens in Europe, but also, as you were, in US. So this was a great factor of uniting people. But then the war in Ukraine and the energy crisis, that was the second. And I could say that I was present at many European councils where the leaders of the European member states are meeting. And I heard several times where the leaders were coming with some priorities, but we would say for the sake of unity, we give up on some priorities because it's important to stay united and stay strong. So yeah, now the unity is definitely very high, which is very good. Definitely not East or West. Of course, there is, as you can see, Hungary, and now, unfortunately, Slovakia with the new government has a different opinion and is more taking rather the messages of Vladimir Putin, unfortunately. But other than that, there is a strong unity in supporting Ukraine and helping them to regain the territory, because the principle of territorial integrity is number one principle, is the top on the list of the priorities in a democratic world, of course.
Excellent, excellent. I have a follow-up question, actually, that was a perfect lead-in to look at the Atlantic Alliance and ask, what is the effect of the conflict on the Atlantic Alliance? At first, there was much celebration that the alliance was stronger, but over time, we've seen some tensions, we've seen supply issues, and some questions as to whether or not NATO has the ability to really defend itself. How is the Atlantic Alliance adjusted, and is it stronger today because of the war in Ukraine?
I think yes. I think the situation in Ukraine is definitely building a stronger unity. That's why Vladimir Putin is trying to break this unity from within. There's so much propaganda in Slovakia. We experience on the social platforms huge increase of propaganda. I don't know what's the situation in the United States, but yeah. So this is one of the things that we see. But this unity is so important because, as I said, it's about investment. And if you ask whether NATO is capable of defense, of course it is. I mean, NATO is, if you look at the defense structures and everything that the NATO members have in their capacity, I mean, we are the strongest alliance in the world. So there is no doubt that NATO can defend itself. Of course it can, but it's more about how we can help, as I said, the neighbor who wants to become part of the developed and democratic world, and also European Union. And we have to say that the expenses that we provide for helping, in this case Ukraine, it's very minor in compare with the other budgets that we either the defense budgets in total or with the budgets that we provide for improving our countries. So, I mean, when I was Prime Minister, there was a lot of messages here in Slovakia that we help much more Ukrainians than the people, the citizens of Slovak Republic, which wasn't true at all. I mean, we spent billions of euros for helping our citizens with the energy crisis, and we spent only millions on helping Ukraine. So you could see the difference, that 1 to 1,000, I would say, was the ratio, where 1,000 was aimed to our citizens and 1 was to Ukraine as a neighbor. So therefore, we should be careful on what kind of information we receive and we actually believe.
Fantastic. I want to turn back in time for a little bit and ask, you grew up during the communist period when it was still part of Czechoslovakia and the Warsaw Pact, and you've seen Slovakia gain its independence and become a member of both NATO and the EU. What does Slovakia's membership in NATO and the EU mean for the Slovak people and for Slovakia as a whole?
Well, it means a lot. I mean, us becoming a member of European Union brought a great prosperity. Definitely. We became also a member of Eurozone, so you can pay with euros in Slovakia, which is very comfortable for the tourists when they come. They can travel, Austria, Slovakia, and other countries and have the same currency. And Slovakia is geographically well located. So if anybody from US wants to travel, Bratislava is a great city where you can travel to Prague, Vienna, Budapest, and have a lot of fun. But so we brought a lot of prosperity. A lot of investors came into a secure environment. But speaking of NATO, I will tell you on one example when the war started. Because, as I said, previous governments weren't investing as much into the defense, and our government started to invest a lot. But since you procure and since you get all the equipment, it takes some time. So when the war started, we didn't have the equipment present, and we were waiting for it. And it was great to have partners from NATO, like, for example, Germany. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz came to me couple of weeks after the war started. And he says, well, Edward, we would like to provide you with 2 batteries of Patriots that they can be located on your territory so your citizens can feel safe. And I said, well, thank you very much. It's definitely what we need. And also Netherlands provided and United States provided 1 battery of Patriots, which made our citizens much more safer. And without being part of NATO, you would not be able to receive such an immediate help of your friends and allies. So that's where you see the unity and the help when somebody is in need, and we are on the very east of NATO, on the eastern border, and bordering directly with Ukraine. So it was very helpful. And for us as a smaller country, which is difficult to get Patriots in procurement, so it was very good that we could have them for a period while we were facing this conflict next door, I would say. So it means a lot, but on the other hand, we're trying to be also a very reliable member of NATO, and that's why my government promised that we'll increase the budget, defense budget, and we were spending a lot into procurement, and we will, and we'll see what this current government will do, but we'll definitely, it means a lot, either EU membership or NATO membership.
Excellent, thank you. You led Slovakia during a very critical time, and your political career has been very strong. You've accomplished a lot. And my next question will be, how do you wish to be remembered as a prime minister? I know your political career is not done, but what were your greatest accomplishments while serving the government?
Well, since my government, I mean, we were in government during all the crises. When our government started, I was my Minister of Finance, the COVID started. So right from the first day, we had to deal with COVID. And then when I became Prime Minister, we were still in COVID, but then the energy crisis and the wars came. So we were putting a lot of effort into helping our citizens to overcome this difficult crisis. We subsidized, and I think we did a very good job because the people economically weren't harmed as much as other countries because we provided sufficient help. And also we provided, and we were on the right side of history, as I would say, helping Ukraine, our neighbor who was in need in this war. And Slovakia in the Second World War, we were dependent on the help of our allies. And during the Slovak National Uprising in 1944, allies came to help us to get Slovakia liberated, and therefore we know how important it is to help those who are in need, because we were in need in 1944, and now is Ukraine in need, and that's why it's so important. It's a great investment, and they will never forget this help, I'm sure, as the Ukrainians will even say now. So these are the major accomplishments. I'm glad that Slovakia was the first one who provided the air defense system to Ukraine, the S-300, and also we're the first one who provided officially the MiG-29s for their protection. And these were the great accomplishments, providing great help to our citizens and also not forgetting and helping our neighbor.
Mr. Heger, I want to ask you a question about demographics. Europe and much of the Western world is facing a demographic crisis, yet Slovakia is not facing as big a demographic crisis as much of Europe is. Why is Slovakia different? And what would you say this means for the future of Slovakia?
Well, actually, Slovakia doesn't face the demographic crisis yet, I would say. And because actually the truth is that Slovakia is the fastest growing or getting old population. And the problem is that in the 70s, during communism, there was a program introduced, and we had so-called baby boom. I'm actually out of the generation of baby boom. There was in our population 100,000 children born a year. Now we have around 50,000. So there was a decrease. So we are facing, and I think we see it all over the, I would say, Western world, that people are having less and less kids. And I'm a father of 4 children, and I know it's not easy, but it's great investment in having more kids. And yeah, this is very challenging. It's on one hand we have to help the parents to provide such a services that they will be able to grow their kids in a decent and comfortable way, and also provide family support from the government. So that's very important to think to see as a family as an investment. When we were speaking helping Ukraine is investment, so helping families is definitely investment to any community in general. So I think it's important to look at the public policies from this perspective, and helping them to provide the budget so they can have more children. In Slovakia, we did a survey several years ago where people would like to have one more child if they could afford it. So that's why my government was very family oriented, and we introduced several subsidies as a motivation for more children. But this is a very broad topic, I would say. Everybody in Europe, I think, is trying to somehow deal with this issue, and I didn't see any government who already found the perfect way.
Excellent. We only have 2 minutes before our show ends. So in the last couple of minutes, why don't you talk about why Bratislava is such a unique city, and what Bratislava offers the world, and why really people should come visit?
Well, as I said, thank you for this question. Bratislava in compare with other Europe capitals, is rather a small city. It's 500,000, so it's not as crowded. You can actually meet people of Bratislava and Slovaks, not just tourists. And it's very close to Vienna. It's only 30-minute drive to Vienna. It's 2 hours on a river to Budapest, and it's 3 hours highway to Prague. So you can visit actually 4 capital cities within a couple of days. And you have a good accommodation, rather quiet, city to come to travel from. And we have beautiful high Tatras mountains that are only 3-4 hours from Bratislava drive. So, and we are a country of 4 seasons, so it's definitely beautiful. I know that Virginia says that it's 4 lovers because it's got 4 seasons, and you're in the south, you don't have that many. You either have hot or then rain, right? So that's why I would like to welcome and invite all your viewers to come visit Bratislava and do great trips to Budapest, Vienna, or Prague, or Warsaw, or anywhere else they like.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr. Heger. It's truly been an honor for us to speak to you today, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you very much once more for the invitation. I enjoyed it as well, and all the best to you. Thank you.